Giovanni, I'm for it. So I on the mandate. See, I don't like the word mandate.
But it is mandated.
It's
It
mandated.
is mandated, and there's no choice. There's no discussion. There's no, you know, if XYZ happens, then you be good. Um, it's pretty much, if you're not vaccinated, you cannot work in New Zealand as a nurse.
It's on.
You're perfect. It's we're back to our being very professional.
Yes, yes, and I'm excited for this this podcast, and
Yeah,
our
me too.
assessment.
Far out. Because we didn't do one last week, did we? Did we do one last week? No, or did we do one last week?
I think we did one last week, but
Oh, we did, but we were supposed to
yeah,
stream. We were supposed to do it yesterday. Anyways,
yes,
so you're back in the office at the moment, eh?
yes. Today was my first day back in the office.
How's that
I just
going?
want to see, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you perfectly.
Awesome. No, so it's my first day back in the office, which was, as I walked in the front door, it was very familiar, because I've been working there for years now. But at the same time, it felt surreal because I haven't been in the office for so long. And, coming to my desk and everything, it was kind of like a bittersweet moment,
Mm.
if I can
Bittersweet
describe
in
it
what
that way.
sense? As in the sense that you like working from home, or bittersweet as, oh my god, I'm back at work now.
Back at work, and things are kind of coming to an end, because there's pros working from home, being amongst family, and
There is.
nothing like the comforts of home, but it comes with a lot of set of challenges as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, doing work in your PJs is something we should carry over into going when we go back to the office. We should just really tone down our dress code.
Yes,
More so than it already is now.
yes, and I must say I was very productive today, which was awesome. So I felt like I achieved a few things, which is the first in a while, which is good.
That's good. Did you struggle to do your usual work while you're at home?
I did. I guess it's just because everything is slowed down, and so making it, just getting small things done is harder, and so everything is slowed down, everything is harder. But there's a bit of psychology to it as well. Like the best example I can point out or use is when you're in a gym, you're amongst like-minded people. You're in that environment, you've got your gym clothes on, and there's all the equipment, and you can go for it. So it's a place of exercise and being active. It's the same thing when I'm at work, even though it's casual wear and stuff, being in the office, being amongst my colleagues, seeing people busy, doctors, nurses, occupational therapists, you name it. So you're in that mindset, and
Mm.
you that's the psychology behind it. So we're at home, making several coffees a day, yes.
The environment plays a big part in it for sure. But I
Yes.
guess the issue is, and I guess this is when they kind of announced that we're going to be going back to the office, it was a bit weird because we were told to work from home because of active cases. And at that time, it was like 20, maybe sitting around the 30s, in terms of active cases in the community.
Mm.
They've said now, come back to work, but our cases are sitting in the hundreds, in triple digits. So it's kind of
Yes.
like, what's the difference now? But I guess the vaccination stuff, the rates are much more higher now, and I guess because you would have gotten that email from our what you call it, from
The
our
nursing,
governing body, yeah, the nursing
yes.
council. You
That's
can't be a nurse if you're
actually
not vaccinated. You can't be a
exactly.
nurse. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So the government for a long time, and you can go back to when COVID was had just started, and we started to get a hand on the pandemic and things like that. The government said multiple times, and the prime minister said multiple times, that we are not going to mandate the vaccine. Blah 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 blah. We're going to, people's better judgment, and people are going to choose, and but they're highly encouraging
Mhm.
it to do it. Now
Mhm.
they seem to have done a complete 180 on that, and although they haven't used the word mandatory, it's pretty mandatory, though, isn't
It's
it?
it, it's very. I personally, I think it's mandatory
Yeah.
because that's what I was doing at this moment. I was retrieving that email from the nursing council, and the first email it basically say that if you are a registered nurse, it doesn't matter whether you have face-to-face contact with people or not.
Yeah.
You must be fully vaccinated by the 1st of December 2021. And
And it's super aggressive. That email
that's
is
very,
like super aggressive, you know?
yes. And
There's
they
no
basically,
easing into it.
no, and they basically says that if you are not fully vaccinated, your registration won't be extended, or granted. So,
You just couldn't work. It's not that if it wouldn't be extended the next year. I don't think you could work then and there. So
mm,
your registration would be put on hold or canceled even.
yeah.
So that's the question I have for you today. What is your thoughts at the moment? And we'll stick to the nursing side of things because
Mm,
this directly impacts us.
mm.
What is your thoughts or feelings on the mandate for nurses to be vaccinated? Are you for it or are you against it?
Giovanni, I'm for it. So I on the mandate. See, I don't like the word mandate.
But it is mandated.
It's
It
mandated.
is mandated, and there's no choice. There's no discussion. There's no, if XYZ happens, then you'd be good. It's pretty much, if you're not vaccinated, you cannot work in New Zealand as a nurse.
And yeah. So, and we spoke about this briefly in our previous
We
podcast,
did.
and my answer is very much the same. I'm actually advocating for nurses to be vaccinated. I think it's the responsible thing to do, but at the same time, I don't feel it should be mandated.
Mm.
Which because it's easy to say, you have to say, you're against it or for it, but so I still think it's a
But
good
it
thing
is
to.
that simple though. Like, are
Yeah.
you? I don't think you can take a middle ground on this one, LJ,
No, no.
because it's basically you do it or you don't, and there's some pretty stark consequences if you do not.
Mm,
Your employment is on the line, and there's no
mm,
like, and I guess there's no gray area in this. It's pretty much black and white from the nursing council's point of view, which is you get
mm,
vaccinated, you can work. If you don't get vaccinated, you cannot work. So
mm.
does that impede on our freedoms at all? Do you
Yeah.
think?
So, my answer to that kind of it's I don't think it should be mandated,
Mm,
for nurses
mm,
to be, forced to, get their vaccines.
mm,
Um, and something I was actually thinking about, this is how tricky it gets. You basically have informed consent in New Zealand, um, and then you basically have, um, legislation. For example, now they're saying you must, for example, get vaccinated, otherwise you can't practice. So I'm actually wondering which one of the legislations is kind of considered above the one, over the other. Is one more important than the other, or?
Well, the nursing council saying that we need to vaccinate, that's not legislation. That is a rule that they've just put in place, which directly affects nurses.
Mm,
So as far as I know, there is no legislation which can enforce it. So this is what I'm kind of struggling with.
mm,
I am a person who's double vaccinated. So,
yeah.
so I'm not an anti-vaxxer, right? So I'm speaking from a person who's double vaccinated and works in the healthcare setting, healthcare field. And from nursing school all the way to where I'm working now, we talk about, like you said, informed consent and being able to choose whether you want treatment, whether you want these things put into your body. And we seem to bypass that completely, and now we're just gonna told that you just have to do it. No discussion, no input. You're just gonna do it. And I do think there is a breach in our ability to make decisions about what goes into our own body with this.
Mm,
Because no other vaccine is put into this kind of category. And I guess, listen, I mean, I don't know whether you can compare all vaccines and the current pandemic at the moment, but I guess I just don't have anything else to compare it to. But you don't have any legislation which enforces people to sort of take the vaccine in particular. right? I'm saying the vaccine in particular because
Mm,
we have the mental health act, which enforces antipsychotic medication for people. But this
mm,
is different, right? Because they're using the pandemic as the sole reason um, to, I guess, enforce people to take the vaccine. So I don't know how I sit on that. I mean, on one hand, I do think the vaccine is going to help slow down the spread of the virus, and I think if you have been double vaccinated, your chance of getting really really sick is less. I believe you're 88% less likely to catch the disease and spread it, although there is still that risk of you catching it and spreading it. But I think the burden on the ICUs and the hospitals less will be less impacted by people getting sick because you would have had the vaccine. So I don't know. I mean, I sit on that side, but at the same on the flip side of that coin, it's shouldn't it be my choice? Shouldn't it be
yeah.
my choice that I take this vaccine, regardless of what the outcome is on myself? You know. So I don't know. I mean, am I barking up the wrong tree, or do you what what are you thinking?
Giovanni, I actually think we have very similar views. So I'm also fully vaccinated, and I agree. I think the vaccines will slow down the spread, and I also think people might not get as sick if they are vaccinated. Um, at the same time, I don't agree with it being kind of mandated,
Mm.
from our nursing body, the nursing council.
So their
And
excuse would be something along the lines of protecting others. So it's not necessarily about you taking the vaccine, it's your potential to spread disease or spread the virus to vulnerable people who potentially cannot take the vaccine. I'm not sure what the criteria is of people who do not qualify for the vaccine, but I can imagine it's a very small number. So, I mean, I don't know what the nursing council is thinking. I don't agree with it, you know.
no,
I'm
I
saying
think
that
it's a bit
now.
of both. It's to protect, I guess, the vulnerable people we work with, and but also to protect nurses with underlying health
Mm.
conditions and things. And a few of our colleagues, does have underlying health conditions and concerns.
Mm.
But Giovanni, this is actually the thing that stood out. In New Zealand, you've got human rights,
Mm.
and then you have the informed consent pathway, and they often go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I think I wonder if the nursing council is this mandation, whether it's part of the health and safety kind of stance on things, whether they feel that as a registered nurse you have a legal requirement or expectation to protect yourself and protect the community,
Mm.
and COVID is probably falling under that category.
Mm.
And if you don't, you're basically, uh, in
Yeah,
breach of that.
I guess we do have a responsibility as healthcare providers to lessen the spread of disease, regardless of what the disease is. I guess with talking about COVID because there's a pandemic, but is that a good enough reason to remove your choice of receiving treatment, or to put it in very very layman terms, um, introducing something into your body? You know, because it we'll go down the line of all these things that we can't do, that would be helpful. I mean, we can't enforce depo provera, so we can't enforce that on people. We can't enforce a whole heap of other medications that would be helpful. We can't enforce chemo treatment on people who have cancer,
Mm.
and all of this is because of, I would imagine, is because of informed consent. They understand what they're getting into, and they are refusing to take these treatments because of whatever reasons they have, personal choice, they don't believe in it, or they just don't want to do it, paranoia, what have you. So with the current pandemic and the risk that we potentially have of spreading it to others, is that enough? Is that enough of a reason to mandate? I've used the word mandate so many times so far,
Mm.
but to mandate the vaccine to nurses. We're trained in PPE and utilizing, what you call it, utilizing like
Will
hand
they
hygiene.
intervene?
Yeah. So we're trained in that. So is the vaccine enforcement a bit too far? Maybe.
John, I think that's probably what a lot of nurses find upsetting about this, including myself, is that, as a registered nurse, we work in healthcare, specializing in mental health, and our aim is to promote well-being, for the people we serve, and that even include kind of upskilling ourselves, using interventions, at our disposal, and even kind of, in situations like this, as you said, using PPE and all those kind of things to keep ourselves safe and keep other people safe. I guess what makes it harder is, and we also touched on this a little bit last time in our podcast, is this, mandate, for us to be fully vaccinated by a specific date? They have extended the date. I got a second email.
Yeah, probably because of the outcry of the nurses.
Yes,
like,
yes.
What the fuck?
Yes, which was a very reactive kind of email I find from the Nursing Council, very reactive and probably not, considered properly, especially around the dates. But what I was wondering is, if we say this is only temporarily, all these interventions is temporarily, this, what is that date? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years, 5 years? Who knows? And it's going to impact a lot of people. A lot of nurses. Would they be able to have a registration if they don't, comply with the vaccines? And would they be able to earn and work? So it doesn't just affect the nurse, but their families and everybody.
Well, it's very clear through the communication we've gotten from the Nursing Council is that they won't be. You won't be able to work or anything like that. Now, they weren't very clear about people, because I do think there is a subset of people that cannot take the vaccine for physical health reasons or for whatever reasons. I wonder what will become of their registration. So if there's a nurse, for example, who can't take the vaccine for a legitimate reason, do they then lose their registration because of that? Or is there a separate pathway for them to continue nursing without the vaccine? Because if there is, then there's no reason why people who choose not to take the vaccine can't take that same pathway. You know what I mean? But from what I understand and what I've heard and what I've seen, what I've read, is that they haven't clarified that. I'm not going to say they don't, because I'll be assuming things. But as far as I know, I can't see any communication about that. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see the nursing workforce over the next 6 months to a year fare, because we are already experiencing a significant amount of staff leaving. We have a significant amount of people leaving the country. Even now, I believe there's still people trying to get to Australia. So it'll be interesting to see what the nursing field will look like in the next couple of months, and whether this mandate will negatively impact us or not.
And Giovanni, I think there's a big movement, and it's coming into our teams at the moment to advocate for people, to get vaccinated, and then you have this mandate on nurses to get vaccinated. Something that I think is upsetting for most nurses is the fact that it's mandated. It's, you've got a specific date and then you have to get these vaccines. I think most nurses probably would comply to get the vaccine regardless of the mandate. But, so like both of us as an example, we both got our, both vaccines. But to me, this feels like it's like coercion in a way. Like it basically, you have a specific date by which you must get vaccinated. Otherwise, there is a consequence, and that consequence directly affects my practice and ability to work. And
less than coercion, it's blackmail almost. If you don't do this, this is the consequence. It's a bit unfair, to be honest.
So there's two parts, one part is the Nursing Council is not just advocating for people to get vaccinated, especially nurses to get vaccinated, but then it's basically mandated. So now suddenly you have, this is where it kind of comes into human rights, it comes into informed consent, it feels a bit like coercion. So you've got all these things that you're concerned about.
I think it is a breach of our human rights. We're being enforced. It's not legislated for one, as far as I could be wrong, or maybe they're bringing it to the floor to see if they can get it legislated. But as I'm going to make an assumption that it's not legislated, where they are enforcing a certain part of the community, nurses in particular, to have the vaccine or be unemployed. So that is our consequence. Do this or experience the consequences. It's a bit. It's actually a bit scary to actually think about it in those terms, because it seems a bit too much, and a massive push on, and it's more along the lines of choice as opposed to the vaccine itself. I I think there's not a very good amount of reasons, or there's not a very large amount of events that happen in the world where governments can just waive off our rights to choose, and I don't know whether this is controversial or not. I don't think this pandemic and what's happening so far in New Zealand in particular is a good enough reason for the nursing council to turn around and say to an already overworked, overstretched group of nurses, we don't give a fuck what you think or what you want. This is what we want you to do. Am I being unfair? I don't know. I'm running on the information that I have at the moment, but from what I do understand is that the nursing council wants us to be vaccinated, and if you choose not to, for whatever reason, it could be legitimate, it could be you're an anti-vaxxer, that's your business, or you're not completely down with the current research of the vaccine, which is fair enough as well. But regardless of that, you take the vaccine or you become unemployed. So I don't know. I think what we may see is actually a lot of people possibly taking the nursing council to court. I'm curious. I'm actually curious to speak to one of our union members to see what they think about this. I mean, we are so up in arms about a lot of things to do with nursing, and I think this is quite a significant part of it. Our choices about our work conditions and how we work is being infringed upon. It's being,
and
you know what I
and
mean?
then you have the ethics side of things as well, and Jim, yeah, so it would definitely be interested to see what the union's thoughts is. And something that I'm personally mindful of is, and even a bit afraid of, is, the long-term effect of, I guess, the mandate, because it does cause a bit of division in the nursing workforce, not necessarily the division of pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine. The argument suddenly becomes, my human rights, my informed consent, where you are mandated to do something instead of, incentives or kind of encouraged or,
I mean, there's incentives at the moment. I mean, we can possibly get into that as well. It's probably a good segue into the incentive side of things. What do you think about giving? Let's talk about like Pacific Islanders. What do you think about giving them KFC vouchers to get the vaccine? What's your thoughts on that as an incentive, right?
Yeah.
Me personally, that's a very. I want to laugh at it because
too, yes.
it's so hilarious that our government is using KFC to entice Pacific Islanders, and I'm going to speak about Pacific Islanders only in this part, to get the vaccine, when in the past we've talked and damned a lot of what KFC has done to the Pacific Island community in terms of obesity, diabetes, and all of that stuff. And now we've kind of just like, oh, actually, KFC is all right as long as you get the vaccine. It's fucking mind-blowing to me.
So that's the thing, Joe. I think the incentives should be appropriate. I don't
grab a vaccine and grab a fucking 20 bucket. You know, you won't catch COVID, but your heart disease rates will fucking shoot right up. Fucking hell. It's yeah. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I want the most vulnerable groups to get the vaccine. I think there's enough research to show that it has responded well to COVID. But also, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being very emotional about it, maybe, or very overly sensitive to it. But it's almost like a slap in the face, as a Pacific Islander, to sort of have your government entice you with fried chicken to go get a vaccine. I don't know. Are they offering wine in other parts of New Zealand? Is Rimmer getting like high, top shelf wine to go get vaccinated? I don't know. I don't know.
Giovanni, and something I wanted to ask you is what do you find most upsetting or concerning, the mandate itself, or would you say the vaccine, concerns around the vaccine?
Both. I don't think there's enough emphasis on how new this vaccine is. There's a lot of see, and I'm speaking from someone who's not as educated in this field as possible. So I'm going to put that as a disclaimer right now. But from the conversations I've heard, the podcasts I've listened to, and this is with medical, medical journalists, scientists, that I've heard a lot of conversations around this, and it's not as straightforward as people think. They're talking about, a prime example will be, encouraging people who already have had COVID to get the vaccine anyway, when there's studies out there that show that if you've already catch COVID, you've gone over it, your immune system and your ability to fight off COVID is much more higher than actually receiving the COVID jab. So, it's kind of like just a blanket rule for everyone. Everyone gets the vaccine, and there's no discussion in between. There was an interesting, which I need to get a hold of, but I was watching a podcast with Joe Rogan and the head of the CNN's medical something. So he's a doctor that works for CNN, and they were discussing this study which shows that young boys between the ages of 16 and I'm going to say 21 who get the vaccine have a pretty high chance of developing cardiomyopathy, or myocarditis, I think is the correct term. So, and you don't hear that anywhere. You don't hear news journalists talking about these studies. You don't hear, especially here in New Zealand, you don't hear anything around that because everyone's so pro vaccine. So it's interesting. So I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people, especially myself, am not aware of, and that makes me very cautious about it. You know what I mean? I mean, they're talking about giving the COVID vaccine to like young children, and statistically speaking, they are the least likely to get unwell and die due to COVID. So it kind of doesn't really make sense, And I don't want to dip into the paranoia and the freaking, the the Illuminati and all that stuff. No, the conspiracies and all that stuff. But I do think there's a lot of not misinformation, but one-sided information being told out there. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Giovanni, I guess, how I see things is every medication we have has a potential for side effects. I guess, and my opinion is, weighing up, is the potential side effects of the medication greater or less than, what it is there to treat. For example, I guess at the moment the aim is that COVID can be, life-threatening, especially to the elderly and vulnerable, and by doing the vaccine, it lessens the chance of you to spread it, and also, for example, for you to get as sick by it, So I guess the question is, the potential side effects of the COVID vaccine, does it outweigh or, not,
Hmm.
what it can do. And that's why I actually, really appreciate personal choice. And, each person has that personal choice, are you comfortable with the vaccine? You've weighed up the pros and the cons, and you've discussed it with your friends and family. And, from a nursing point of view, to me, it makes sense. But I guess my concern is once it gets mandated, it kind of removes that discussion, it removes that choice. So suddenly you as a person or me as a nurse, um, if I, for example, have a difference in opinion, pros and cons, it removes that. And my big concern is also, it's not so much around the vaccine for me and personally, it's more around the mandate on the vaccine.
Hmm.
It suddenly causes division in the team or division in the in the field of nursing, and that's my concerns because you might have people that's on the fence. You might have people that's completely against it for various of reasons, whether it's to do with personal beliefs, whether it's to do with um, personal health related reasons or religious or cultural or whatever that may mean. And then people that's pro vaccine, so it my concern is that segregation it potentially can cause. And we have seen nurses already upset around, the mandate and, having to, um, that freedom of choice being removed.
No, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, I would have to agree. If I had to weigh up between, you know, the vaccine itself or the mandate, the mandatory vaccinations concern me the most because that's real power being enforced upon the people, you know. So that's what concerns me the most because it kind of opens up a door for them to say, well, listen, we got away with enforcing this. What else can we enforce, you know? So you know, as paranoid as that may sound and as conspiracy theory that may be, um, no one can tell me that is not a potential possibility. You know what I mean? Um, what is? Maybe you can explain this to me. What the fuck does the new traffic light system for Auckland or New Zealand do? Because at this point in time, I have no clue what it actually means. And I watched a little bit of it. You know, I don't understand it. Like, if you're vaccinated, it doesn't matter, but if you're not, it does. What do you know much about it, or are you just as confused as I am?
Giovanni, I'm pretty much as confused as you, and I'm thinking I'm speaking to a lot of my colleagues. We're pretty much confused. I think it was an attempt from government, or basically to give it a bit of direction, future direction for the general population on what to expect and things. But it I think it's raised more questions than answers, personally.
Because I am curious to know because at the moment, and because this is not just an Auckland thing, this is going to be a New Zealand wide sort of not an initiative, but it's going to be a New Zealand wide thing that's going to cover everyone. So places like the South Island, who's currently not in level 3, level 2 or anything, people there are going to shops, they're going to get their haircut, they're going to go do this and do that. Um, Once this kicks in, and those are vaccinated and non-vaccinated as well, so they're doing that right at the moment. So when this kicks in, my understanding is the non-vaccinated won't be doing that now. So it's kind of like going backwards in a way. I do know that if you're vaccinated, you're just a better person than everyone else in the system. So, from my understanding, but as a whole, I'm not really sure what is happening. Is it just another way to sort of get more people to get vaccinated, or because you're talking about, you mentioned before about incentives. Do you agree with the incentive that if you're vaccinated, you get to do certain things in your community that non-vaccinated people can't do? Like, are you for that kind of incentive or no?
Giovanni, I'm not for it. I think, it needs to be an appropriate incentive. I'm not going to comment on what's appropriate and not. I guess that's up to the powers to be. But incentives like that, if you, for example, are fully vaccinated, it kind of gives you the ability to do things. But it causes segregation, it causes that potential for discrimination. And then there's all these kind of what's the word? Kind of like unforeseen kind of situations that arise.
Yeah.
And, for example, consequences, like let's say, for example, you have legal discretion why you shouldn't have to wear a mask, let's say for a personal health reason, an exemption, but then at the same time, you are not legally obliged to show your, exemption if you're asked, at a coffee shop or, in the mall or wherever. But then people get upset, because they want to understand why you're not wearing a mask. And suddenly there's a situation for conflict and discrimination. And so there's all these barriers that, that comes up. So I think, incentives like that causes more harm in the community, it causes more discrimination, and open up a can of worms. So it needs to be,
proper incentives.
Yeah.
So you're against it. You're against this two-tier system of New Zealand where the vaccinated, like I said, are better than everyone else, and the non-vaccinated are scum of New Zealand. That's kind of what the system is implying. I don't agree with it as well. I don't think segregating the country further and dividing it further is going to be a good thing moving forward. And it also is funny that because the government also said, like I said earlier, they were not going to mandate it all, so they're mandated without actually saying they're mandating it. So it's interesting.
And this is the ethic issue, Gio, is once you do those type of incentives, some people have privileges, others don't. For somebody who's not vaccinated to have, which can't get into specific places, whether it's a restaurant or wherever, it can be seen as coercion. Either you get this or you won't be able to have a particular lifestyle or live life as you used to.
And she was very clear about it too. There's been quite a few emails where interviews, like I'm emailing directly with the Prime Minister. There's been a lot of interviews where she's actually said it very bluntly. Yeah, if you're not vaccinated, there will be certain things you cannot do in the community. I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. I mean, we need the vaccination rates to go up, but through coercion and mandates, and there's a lot of, it's sad. I find it sad because there's a lot of people that I've spoken to about this who are okay with it. They're okay with this mandate of people needing to take the vaccine or else you can't do certain things. And that's a scary thought, to have to just give up your autonomy, and your rights that quickly is very interesting. It's very, very interesting indeed.
Giovanni, and on the other hand, I'm sure we have some listeners, who, for example, would say, you both are healthcare, professionals, both registered nurses, and you both have had your vaccines even before the mandate came out. And what's the problem? What's the concern?
Well, see, I think I agree with that. I think we provide healthcare. We are high risk of contracting COVID. I think we should be vaccinated. I just don't think we should be mandatory vaccinated. I think the government and let's talk about the healthcare system should bend over backwards to make as much leeway for nurses as possible. I don't think mandating them to take the vaccine is a good way forward. Not to rehash it all over again. I mean, we just had a pretty decent conversation about it, but it's crazy. It's crazy that we are sitting here, and all the conspiracy theorists are probably like sitting back, clapping their hands, saying, "I fucking told you, I told you." Look at what the government's doing. you know, and it's a bit scary because they're fucking right. They were saying eventually the government is going to use this as a way to control the masses. Well, fucking here you go. There's an aspect right here on paper, evidence that part of the government is actually mandating and controlling a group of the population, you know, not for sinister reasons, but power doesn't have to be sinister. People just want power, so who knows? I fucking don't know. I just don't know.
And it's sometimes not always easy and straightforward. And I'm not advocating at all for the decisions, the nursing council has made or the government has taken. I think there's a few learning opportunities there.
Mm-hmm.
But, I guess each individual, a nurse and each individual person would have a different take on things. Some people, for example, would have underlying health concerns and probably have had both vaccines. But it's still, that concern, am I at risk, am I, is my life in danger? And, that expectation or that hope that healthcare professionals like nurses and the greater community would do what is necessary to prevent unnecessary loss or to,
within reason.
Within reason.
Do things within reason to sort of make sure things are okay. I mean, we should be glad that we don't allow the government to fully control what we do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, me and you are involved quite heavily in the Mental Health Act, and I see how destructive that can be for a person and how traumatic it can be for a person. And our justification for that is risk. Like risk to self, risk to others. And that's a pretty high threshold. We have a high threshold for putting people in the Mental Health Act to enforce treatment. I don't think we are close to that level of risk where we need to enforce things. If anything, the government should start investing in healthcare to help, prepare for what is going to be the inevitable increase in COVID cases. I don't think mandatory vaccinations are going to really, well, I'm being a skeptic here. I don't think it's going to really do too much. I think our ICUs are going to be overstretched and overwhelmed. And a lot of the nurses are the ones who actually decide to get vaccinated and stay are going to be overworked as well, while still being under pressure from the other nurses to get a vaccine, which they probably don't want to take.
And this is something I kind of thought of as well, is let's say, for example, there is nurses that, for example, for various of reasons, decided not to have the vaccine, and therefore by the date, from the nursing council wouldn't be able to practice. At the moment, we don't know for how long that would be. It's as how long as the string, I guess. But do you think that nurses would lose their employment as a consequence of that decision not to get vaccinated?
Well, you can't practice as a nurse without a practicing certificate, which is our registration. So in saying that you cannot get registered or we are going to cancel your registration because you're not getting the vaccine, forces the hand of your employer not to employ you. I mean, you could be the best nurse in your ward, and if you choose to not take the vaccine for whatever reasons, they will have no choice but to let you go. You can't practice without a practicing certificate. So it enforces people to become unemployed. So yes, I think people will lose their employment, which is which is the blackmail side of things. Take the vaccine or become unemployed. So yeah, I think they will for sure. And we're already short staffed as it is, like I said. So fuck. I'm surprised that there's not more outcry for this. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of people, mind you, I haven't been working at the office as much. And I haven't run into anyone as much or had any conversations with them because we've all been working from home. But even in the news, I haven't heard a lot of I haven't heard a lot of backlash from the nursing community, the people who are actually on the floor working. You know, I think of it. I think because a majority of them agree to have the vaccine. You know, but I guess whether it's a fight people want to take or not, it's people just seem to be okay with it. You know, being told that you have to take the vaccine, and if you don't, you lose your job. So it's interesting.
And I also think there's an element of hope. I want to use the word desperate hope from a lot of my colleagues.
Desperate
So
hope.
desperate
Wow.
hope. It's basically, the hope that, there's a target, once 90% of the population of New Zealand is vaccinated, all of this comes to an end. That's, I think, the hope people are clinging to. So a lot of nurses is for example, getting the vaccinations, encouraging people to get vaccinated. And I'm sure it comes even through to the households and friends and family circles of the nurses. But then with the hope that once New Zealand gets to that 90 mark, the use of PPE, the screenings we're doing, scanning in and out of shops, even dare I say the mandation on your vaccines, all these interventions comes to an end, so that you kind of get back to I guess your usual.
It's a
I don't know
fool's
whether,
hope, I think, as opposed to
but of
desperate hope.
desperate hope.
I don't think so. I don't think much is going to change when we hit that 90% because COVID is still going to be a thing in New Zealand. There's no elimination, of it, especially this Delta variant, which is highly contagious because it's airborne. So this is the thing. If we abide by all these new rules, all these new regulations and things like that, we hit the 90%. That's the entirety of New Zealand with vaccinations. But COVID is still out there. We're still sitting in triple digits. Do we remain, what's the plan moving forward? And I guess that's why I want to try and understand this 3-step this traffic light system. What does that look like and what does that actually mean for a lot of people? Not just us nurses, but the entirety of New Zealand. Like, what is that going to mean for your everyday person down the street? Are we going to be allowed to do the things that we enjoy? Are we going to be locked back home where we can't leave the house anymore? Whether you're vaccinated or not, I don't know. And that's the concerning thing. I think a lot of that is still on me. I haven't actually gone in and watched it and read about it in depthly yet. But I don't think it should be that hard. I don't think it should have been this hard to sort of understand our new COVID system and how it works. It should be very clear and easy and easy to find,
And I guess, me personally, I probably fall under that category of the nurses, with some hope there that once you reach a particular target, 90%.
You're too positive, bro. I think
I'm
you're way
hoping
too
all of
positive,
this,
bro.
this is coming to an end. My fear is that, the use of masks, the use of scanning into shops, the use of, full PPE and all those things is long term, and, mandation of, vaccines and things, it's long term. And my concern is the longer that is, more people get stressed out, more and more people get angry, more and more people, for example, wouldn't abide by the interventions, incentives, and expectations. And at the same time, it causes and fuels that segregation, difference in opinion, and that's where you end up with, what we've seen in other countries of the riots and things. It's a so I'm hoping that this is all just
I'm
temporary.
hoping we don't fall into like what Australia is experiencing at the moment with the riots and all that stuff. But at the same time, I can understand why people have taken to the streets to protest. The rioting, there's no excuse for rioting, but the protesting side of things, I can see why they've done it. And I hope New Zealand doesn't fall into that category or that thinking. I think listen, it's our right to protest and things like that, but usually with these things, because we've been going through it for so long, I mean, it's carried on since last year. We had a little brief, intermission in between, but we're kind of back to what we were experiencing and feeling in 2020. And to have this I guess this feeling that it may be going on for another year, another 2 years, another 3 years can be very frustrating for a lot of people. And I'm thinking along the lines of all the business owners, especially the small New Zealand business owners and stuff, um, who can't afford to keep closing down every time there's an outbreak, you know.
Mm.
No.
And to add to that, Giovanni, and it's not just in the nursing profession, but in our role, it is stressful working as a nurse, and you do need that downtime. Sometimes just, being with family, being with friends, doing your own hobbies, interests. And that often involves going to a local restaurant or, to the cinemas and, um, those kind of activities. And, at the moment we are not able to. So the stress is kind of building and building and building. And, it's right here in our homes and you don't have the ability to unwind.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, as much as possible, we want life to go back to how it was, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as a everyday kind of person, I think we can. I think we can just go back to how things were, open everything up, and then just try find some normality back into life. Knowing that we're not going to get rid of COVID, you know. But is people keen for that? I don't know.
I actually wanted to ask Giovanni. So here we are. I'm in the blue team. You are in the green team,
Mm-hmm.
and at the moment the blue team can go into the office. This was my first day at specific days of the week, and then vice versa, green team at specific days of the week. And it's basically the bubble, keep blue team and green team members separate.
Yep.
So I think the thought behind that is that if a person in the blue team get COVID or positive, at least the green team can carry on with the work, and it's not the whole team being stood down. Do you think it's sensible, kind of how we are practicing at the moment or how the team is set up?
Is it sensible? I guess on paper it does. I mean, the last thing we want is for an entire team to be stood down. But my argument would be that if I would say that I'll be very surprised if there's anyone in our building, who's not vaccinated. I'll be very surprised if someone actually caught COVID in our building. But I don't know. I guess what it does, it gives people a sense that that will continue on, if someone catches COVID. But I think it's a bit silly, because if, for example, we're all working together, right, and one of us catches COVID, we can all just go back and work from home and get tested, right? We can still do that. So I don't know if it actually warrants us working in different bubbles. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, on an emotional level, it kind of sucks because I'm losing the support of half of the team. I mean, me and you as intensive nurses, we're the only two that's on the floor at the moment. The other two are, for their own personal reasons, cannot go out and see clients. So it's me and you, basically. And a lot of our work has to do with us relying on each other to sort of go on joint visits. We sort of talk a lot about cases. We kind of troubleshoot with each other. That's kind of lost at the moment because we're in two separate bubbles, even though me and you could just meet at the office on the weekend and we won't actually need to do anything. You know what I mean? So I guess it's hard for me to say. I can see on paper why it would be useful to have different bubbles. I don't like it because of the supports being halved, Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Because the reason I asked that is,
on.
no, that's all good. The reason I asked Giovanni is because we were all working from home now for the last few weeks, and we were using our home as a base to drive out and see people, and we were not really going upstairs or anything to our desks or anything. And suddenly we get an email to say we are going back to the office, in the separate teams. So part of me is wondering whether our team, is preparing to live with COVID-19 with, as a kind of a stepping stone or, moving towards that direction to have everybody back in the office. That's what I was wondering.
We should be. We should
the
be.
notion behind it.
I mean, the government's no longer talking about elimination, so we should be working on finding long-term ways of living with COVID. I mean, that is what's going to happen for the foreseeable future. Whether we're actually doing that or not is kind of probably not happening as quickly. I think we're being very cautious. I think, especially our team, we're being very cautious because we don't want someone to catch COVID and the entire system has to be put on hold, because if someone catches COVID, everyone has to be stood down that was working that day. So you have to get tested, but it takes about a week for the test to come back positive. If you do have COVID, so there's a potential of people unable to see clients for a week, which can be very disastrous in our line of work. So I can see the need for bubbles and things like that. But eventually someone's going to catch COVID. I think it's going to be you. I've got money on you. I don't know why. I just think
I've had a very bad luck run.
I think I'm going with your luck, and now that I've said it, I'm probably going to be the one to catch it now. But I think
I'll start my template, my reflection template.
Just copy and paste your last one, bro. Just copy and paste your last one. Yeah, I don't know. I think we should all be very confident that we're all double vaccinated. We should be working to sort of get back to some normalcy. We should be trying to get back to a normal way of working as much as possible, because at the end of the day, the main group of people who are suffering is our clients, because we are unable to provide the same amount of care that we used to prior to this lockdown, prior to COVID. So we have to bear that in mind too. I mean, yes, we are frustrated as clinicians, but we need to put ourselves in our clients' shoes and figure out what is best for them. So we have to take into account that we may be potentially carrying COVID from client to client if we get sick, or catching it from a client while we're going out to see them. So it's I don't know. I was at the office today and I saw Ambi wearing one of the big face shields. And that's now mandatory for us, that we have to wear massive face shields when we go see people face to face. So, we're already starting to put in little bits and pieces to make us more accessible in the community. Whether it's warranted or not, I don't know, because they're saying to wear N95 masks to go see people. But as you can see with my beard, that N95 mask is not actually going to do shit, really. So yeah.
I've got a bit of a story on that one, Giovanni.
Do you?
So at the moment,
did you get told off for something?
Fortunately not, but so I think a lot of people that puts the PPE together, they're in offices and they're putting this PPE, together, from a hospital point of view. It's clean in hospital, it's dry, and it makes sense. But here, in the community, there's a lot of variables to consider. And, so at the moment when you do face-to-face contact, it's expected that you do your COVID-19 screen, and then based on that, you use what PPE is, kind of appropriate. So I do the screen today. It's a white screen, which means there's no consent. But even so, I have to wear the N95 mask. That's why I'm nice, cleanly shaven there. And
I'm ashamed for you.
And I have to put my face mask on, the same one that you saw. So it's a big shield.
The face shield, yeah.
Yes. And then my gloves, So I do the home visit, and it was raining today, Giovanni. So that small distance between, just kind of from the front porch, to the front door, with my shield on, it started raining, so my shield kind of got raindrops and stuff.
You didn't order the one with wipers?
I should get one with wipers. So here I am, in the family home, we're all kind of keeping our spaces and stuff. But now I've got my shield on. It's full of raindrops, and it starts fogging up, because of my mask. And it's, so suddenly I can't actually see much, and I have to do an injection. And if I do an injection, I need to properly see where am I administering, the medication. And so I'm fogging up, there's raindrops, and I'm struggling with everything, and I can't see. And, so suddenly, the home visit, the point is, me providing support, doing a mental state, answer a few questions and doing the injection, but suddenly I'm more preoccupied with my own, situation with my PPE and things that it actually was not that easy and straightforward. So I don't know actually how helpful that full PPE was at that exact moment. It was quite awkward.
It's sometimes not practical. I'm not looking forward to continuing to wear PPE during the summer because it is hot wearing that shit, man. Honestly,
so
but this is our present. This is what's happening for us now, and I mean, listen, I would lie if I said I don't have a little hope that things are going to. No, that's not true. I do hope things are going to improve, but do I believe they will? I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. I'm 50-50 on it. Things could get a whole lot worse. We get a new variant of COVID, which is immune to the vaccine. I don't know who the fuck knows, Some pretty good discussions today.
Yes.
Hell. I'm gonna have to listen back to this and see what the fuck I just said. I'm hoping no one from the nursing council is gonna listen to this and be like, "What the?"
Get those two
We're just having discussions here, man. Okay, we're just having discussions. Okay. Well, listen, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and tuning into the assessment podcast today with me and LJ. You can catch these shows on YouTube. Just search us up on the Assessment Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, same name, the Assessment Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram, the Assessment Podcast. I'm just kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. But you can also find us affiliated with the West Network, which is a group of podcasts based here in New Zealand. Bunch of awesome shows you can find there. Everything from TV shows to politics to girl talk to sports. You'll find it there. All right, you can find them at you can find them. Let me repeat that properly. You can find them at westwestnet.com. We're also all over Instagram and Facebook, so look us up too. Cool.
Thank you.
Damn, that was I'm actually kind of. The nursing council are gonna look at this and be like, "What the heck are these two assholes talking about?"